welcome everybody to the last presentation of today. So I hope to make it very interesting. So BioInvent, this is a company focusing on cancer therapy, and we're especially focusing on a special environment around the cancer, which is called the tumor microenvironment, and currently have 5 proprietary studies in clinical development. And before I go a little bit more in detail, I will give you a quick snapshot, a quick summary on the company. So as I already said, so we are focusing on cancer therapy. As everybody knows, a high unmet need still. And in contrast to other companies, so we're really focusing on a portfolio. So we're not only focusing on one program. So currently we have 6 clinical programs that are running. And we have generated them in-house with a platform that also I will explain to you in a minute in a little bit more detail. This platform has been validated through a number of partnerships, so we have 10 plus partnerships already ongoing. And besides our own internal portfolio, we have then a portfolio with those partner companies as well, around 5 to 6 programs at various stages of clinical development, phase 1, phase 2, and the first one now going into phase 3. The company is based in Lund, southern Sweden. We are roughly 120 people. Company is very integrated, which means we do our own discovery work. We also do our own production, formulation, and then also clinical development. And this is everything under one roof, which gives us a competitive advantage to our competitors, because normally smaller companies, they have to work with outside service providers. We don't have to do that. And that allowed us really to bring 6 clinical programs within 6 years, which is actually quite good. So we're listed in Stockholm on the OMX Stock Exchange, and you can see there that's a second last bullet point. We also have a strong international shareholder base, so a couple of US investors such as Redmile, Omega, Envus, and blue chip European such as Forbion, HBM. Just to mention a few, but also very good Nordic names, so AP4 and Handelsbanken. We have been quite active during the last 6 years regarding financing, so we did a couple of successful financings as well as 2 partnerships, and in total we generated 260 million US, and that provides us also with a good runway until the end now from Q1 of 2026, which will allow us to reach value inflection milestones. Just very briefly on the platform. So this is a platform that we have generated in-house, it's proprietary, and I will just explain you the differences. So normally you would start screening with a specific target that you have identified through various means, and then you go through the various steps. We do it the other way around. So we have a very close collaboration with a local hospital in Lund that gives us access to high-quality patient material that we get on a regular basis, and that patient material is directly used to screen our antibody libraries to find new compounds. And I think that gives us the advantage that we really recognize with the compounds that we identify the patient situation and not something artificial. And once we have then specific antibodies selected, we go through a very vigorous functional testing in animals. And only those antibodies and target combinations that have shown that they can cure cancer in animals then are proceeding into clinical development. So it's a very vigorous, very complex process that end up in targets and antibodies that have a high success rate of being translated from preclinical work into the clinical work. And that's also what we're seeing. So we currently have 6 programs, all up and running, all safe, and all showing first signs of efficacy. So with that platform, we have generated this portfolio, and this is a very busy slide, but I will try to simplify that. So on the left-hand side, you see 3 targets listed. So the first one is TNF receptor 2, which could be a potential new checkpoint. And there we just had recently data at ASCO, a very important scientific meeting, and more recently at ESMO, which is the European counterpart. And that data that we have released actually has driven the share price from roughly 100 million that we had market cap US dollars to almost 300 million, where we are at the moment. So the data have been very strongly perceived by the market. And I will give you some more details in the subsequent slides. First, just here on the summary. So that's a TNF receptor 2 program. 2 compounds, the data that we have generated that has generated the interest is 1808. 1910 is another compound that is currently has started clinical development, also proceeding well, but has not generated data yet. Then another important target is Fc gamma R2b, which is where we have two compounds. 1206 is the lead compound, 1607 is a secondary, and the lead compound also has generated proof of concept. We have seen very strong responses, complete responses that are long-lasting for some patients more than 3 years. And then last but not least, our collaboration with Transgene, CTLA-4, that's a program that we also have presented now at ASCO, where we could show good safety and efficacy. So a little bit more in detail on the TNF receptor 2 program. So mainly I will focus on 1808. And this is the clinical study that we're running. I will not go into much detail here. It's basically just to mention that we do single agent development as well as combination. It's important to show single agent activities such that you know you have an active compound, but it's also important to show that you can combine it because cancer therapy at the end is combination therapy. The single agent dose escalation is done, and we're now on the right-hand side in a number of dose expansion cohorts, namely ovarian cancer, melanoma, GIST and lung cancer, as well as CTCL, which is a rare T-cell lymphoma. With the combination with Pembro, we're a little bit behind because you have longer waiting times. We're just doing the dose escalation, and then we also will basically go into the same dose expansion cohorts. Then on the data that has driven the share price, this is in a patient population that is heavily pretreated, so very, very sick patients. They don't have any treatment options anymore, and they received our compound as a single agent. And we published at ASCO that you see on the right-hand side that we could see a complete response in ovarian cancer, a patient that was heavily pretreated, a very strong partial response in a GIST cancer patient, and then we had 9 patients with stable disease. On top of that, which we just released a week ago, a little bit more than that, we have also very strong response in a rare T-cell lymphoma, and out of 4 patients, we had 4 responders, so which is a very good result. 3 partial responses and 1 stable disease. Just to give you a little bit of an impression, so this is the ovarian cancer patient, lady, 63-year-old, got all the standard of care, didn't respond anymore, had a target lesion of 25 millimeters. And after the first post-treatment scan, that means 9 weeks after we provided a single agent 1808, the tumor was gone. So basically turned into a complete response, and that has been confirmed. So very impressive clinical result. Then on the GIST patient, which is a very difficult to treat intestinal tumor indication, 55-year-old male, got 12 regimens of standard of care, no response, then received 1808 as a single agent, and we could reduce the lesions because this person was completely metastasized by more than 60%. This patient is still on treatment, still improving, so that's another very impressive result. So on 1808, before I switch to 1910 very briefly, so there will be further updates throughout the year. So since you are now in 4 dose expansion cohorts, so data is coming in, and we expect further supportive data that will drive even the share price higher. That is our expectation. 1910, the second candidate, is still in dose escalation, running very well. And here we will see probably first data by the end of the year. This is a study that we're running with 1910. And we are now on the left-hand side in dose escalation, basically almost finished before we move into the more interesting part of that study. Then switching gears to the second target, Fc gamma R2b, which is a very important target also in the tumor microenvironment. 2 compounds, 1206 and 1607. 1206 is the lead, and there we have shown very impressive data already earlier. So this is from the dose escalation. You can see very nice overall response rate, 6 complete responses. And I think the important thing here really to mention is those are complete responses that are long-lasting, which means for some patients already more than 3 years, which is basically a cure. Besides this, we had a couple of partial responses and stable diseases, so very impressive dose escalation data. This is from our IV formulation. We also developed a subcutaneous formulation because it's the more handy product. It's much more easy to apply. You can do it at the local doctor. It just takes a couple of minutes in order to get the infusion under the skin. And this is still preliminary data, and we presented that at EHA, a very important European Congress for Hematology. And out of 4 patients at that time point, we had 4 complete responders. Not complete responders, 4 responders, 1 complete, 2 partial, and 1 stable disease. But out of 4, evaluable patients. At that time point, 4 responders, I think, which is also a very good result. So that has moved us to move then in the triplet study. So we have an ongoing collaboration with AstraZeneca, and we want to combine our product with one of the main products of AstraZeneca, which is called acalabrutinib. And initially, we had planned to do that with our IV formulation, but since the sub-Q has made such a good progress, we are moving now ahead with our sub-Q, and we had the press release just a couple of weeks ago. And the first data that we will have for this triplet will be by the end of the year. There we will have a handful of patients, and I think that will be also quite interesting because we are expecting a very high overall response rate. So there will be an update by the end of the year for this study. We are developing 1206 also in solid cancer, then in combination with pembrolizumab. And there we're targeting patients that do not respond anymore to the standard of care. In this case, pembrolizumab or Keytruda, which is the top 1 selling cancer drug worldwide. We saw also here some first good results. This is from dose escalation. Just to give you some images here. So this is a partial response with uveal melanoma, very difficult to treat melanoma indication. The next one, I think, is a complete response of a melanoma patient who also did not respond anymore to anti-PD-1 therapy. I think he received actually 3 different regimens of either anti-PD-1 or anti-PD-L1 containing regimens and did not respond anymore, and then the combination responded again. So I think this is also very nice, such that we then soon will move from the left-hand side, which is dose escalation, into the signal seeking, and currently we're running here still the IV and the sub-Q in parallel. Once we know the sub-Q is also working well for the solid cancer, then we will switch to sub-Q as we already have done for the non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Then 1607, the second Fc-gamma2b candidate, there we did a very successful dose escalation, could show it's safe. And we're preparing now, and we have done, we will do this also under an agreement with Merck, a supply and collaboration agreement that we just have signed a couple of weeks ago. And there we will combine our compound with ipilimumab and pembrolizumab, which is very interesting because that's what the oncologists always want to do, but can't do because it's too toxic. And with our compound, we can reduce the concentration of ipilimumab, still have the efficacy, but then reduce the toxicity. So that will be also quite interesting and should be a very interesting treatment options for, more closer to end-stage cancer patients. Then last but not least, the anti-CTLA-4 story, which we just published at ESMO. There we combined our proprietary anti-CTLA-4 antibody with an oncolytic virus and basically could show that we can have efficacy. So we had tumor regression, especially with patients who failed previous anti-PD-L1 treatment. In heavily pretreated leiomyosarcoma, for instance, we could turn cold tumors into so-called hot tumors that respond again, so that stop responding but then respond again. And we had good efficacy as well as good safety. So basically in this program, we're now in the middle part, as you can see here. We will finish that and then move on to the phase 2A expansion cohorts. Then at the end, just very briefly, the remaining milestones for this year. So starting from the bottom, maybe BT-001, we just had an update during ESMO, so there will be no further updates this year. But then there's still 3 programs outstanding. So 1808, the single agent compound, which could be the new checkpoint modulator in solid tumors. There will be some further updates towards the end of the year. I mentioned the 1206 in non-Hodgkin lymphoma in combination with acalabrutinib. There will have the first handful of patients by the end of the year. And then there will be also further updates around 1910, which is the second anti-TNF receptor 2 program. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation here. And as you mentioned here in the presentation, Joel, you have a lot of ongoing studies right now. Mm-hmm. Do you think there's anyone in particular that would interest the crowd right now, or?
Yeah, I would think so. All the programs are first in class, so they all address major unmet needs, so big markets. But I think from the global interest, I think probably there's a lot of interest around TNF receptor 2. which could be a new checkpoint, and with 1808, a new checkpoint modulator. And what I can give a little bit more background here. So everybody probably has heard about Keytruda, the #1 drug selling in cancer. And the clinical data that we have now, even though it's still early days, resembles very much what has been seen with Keytruda at that time of clinical development. So it's a very exciting story, actually, that is developing at the moment. And that also explains the share price increase or market cap increase from 100 million to almost 300 million US dollars.
I understand. And looking from a CEO perspective, is it hard to, so to speak, overlook all of these studies, or is it just positives, or any challenges you meet there on a daily basis?
Well, you always have to ensure that you have good execution, that you keep basically the milestones that you have promised to the market. But we have a very, very good team. And I think for the moment, we will keep the portfolio as it is. If we then move forward with one or the other program, then there might be prioritizations at some time point. But that will be entirely data-driven. At the moment, I would say all the programs that we're running are justified. But there might be at some time point prioritizations, absolutely.
Thank you. Could you provide an update on any of your current partnerships a little bit? It would be nice to know which companies you're working with.
Yeah, so I think I have actually, let me see, a slide here.
Yeah.
So this is the portfolio that we have with our partners. You see the names on the right-hand side. So you see Mitsubishi, Takeda, Daiichi, Bayer. And, most of the programs are in phase 2. And the one that is particularly interesting to us because it's now moving to phase 3 is the one with Takeda. And that, of course, would trigger interesting milestone payments and also brings it closer to the market. It's still, a couple of years to go. But all those programs could trigger milestones through clinical development and commercial development, and then at the end, tiered royalties. So I think this is also quite interesting. It's also a validation of our platform because those companies, together with us, used also the platform that we have used for our internal program.
I understand. It might be early stages right now, but if we're looking ahead in the sort of periscope, do you see that you will launch through commercial partnerships when you're going to reach the market, or will you do it independent? And what's the plan there?
Yeah, so those programs, they're in the hand of the partners, right?
Yeah.
So they derive it by themselves, and whenever we reach certain milestones, then we receive them. Regarding our own programs, so the plan there is that we show proof of concept. So what we're really good at is identifying new mode of actions, translating them quickly into the clinical environment, and then hopefully show good results, and then we will look for partnerships. So we're not currently looking for long-term commercialization because that will take quite some time. It's also quite some risk for a company such as us. Because then you really have to put all your eggs into one basket, and it might go well, but it might also, so it will be very binary. So what we are really interested in is once we are at the stage now, as with 1206, where we have proof of concept, 1808, where we see very strong single agent activity, to look for a partner. We have already discussions on its way. And then we would probably follow more the GenMap model, which means establishing partnerships, maybe retaining some rights, but really sharing the risk and the burden with a larger partner.
And looking a little bit on financial, you mentioned here as well you have a pretty strong cash position right now that will be funding you until, what's it, 2026 or something?
End of Q1 2026.
Yeah. Is there any milestones you need to reach before that? You think that we need to reach those levels before?
Yeah, there will be definitely a couple of milestones. So you can see that we reached some milestone in a way already this year.
Yeah.
That explains the increase from 100 to 300 million. And I think there will be further milestones, maybe already by the end of this year, but definitely next year.
So there are some triggers in their time as well.
For sure,
yeah.
For sure. And we'll come out actually with the milestones for next year in the next coming month.
All right.
Yeah.
You have also presented, as you mentioned here, on ESMO, the conference in Barcelona, here in September. How was the data you presented received, and do you have any takeaways from that fair?
Yeah, so ESMO, that was mainly the last program, BT-001, the oncolytic virus, combined with our antibody, was very well perceived since we have safety and can show efficacy. And then we also have presented for the first time our second TNF receptor 2 program, 1910, which was basically a trial update, was not so much data. So the bigger highlights were actually earlier this year was during ASCO, where we had 2 strong programs with strong efficacy data and then also a little bit later EHA, which is the Hematological Congress, where we presented 1206 data. That was actually even more impactful.
I understand.
But what we did now, and that was not presented at ESMO, we had also a press release showing further updates on 1808, which was not presented at ESMO, but was also a pretty strong market trigger. So that was the data where we saw out of 4 patients, 4 responders.
But do you have any more fairs or conferences in the near schedule?
So this year probably will be Jefferies,
yeah,
in London, and that's the main thing, and then a couple of small things, but it will be Jefferies, and then next year JP Morgan. Yeah.
Yeah. So the schedule is getting booked.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And you also communicated here in September that you have recruited the first patient to your triple combination study here. How long do you think it will take to fill all the spots, so to speak?
Yeah, so basically what I said, towards the end of the year, we'll have probably the readout for the first handful of patients, and in total it will be around 30 patients that we want to enroll. And when I say the first handful, that means that we can interpret some data. Yeah. So of course we will enroll much more patients by that time. I think we will come out with, as I said, so during the next couple of weeks, with our milestones for next year, and that will be one important milestone once this study is finished. Yeah. Nice. But I think we get a good idea already by end of this year regarding the potential of the triplet combination.
All right. Just to conclude here a bit, for all the visitors here and also looking at home, why should we consider BioInvent as a potential investment?
Well, you can see it already through the recent dynamic that we had. So we are now at a stage where really we have clinical data that shows that our compounds are working. We knew already that they're safe. And I think I'm just referring again to the value triggers that we had during mid this year. It's more than doubling of the current market cap. And I think we are now at the brink to do that probably a few times more.
Perfect. Time is running away here. Thank you so much for the presentation and answering our questions. And thank you all for tuning in today. And I'll see you again.
Thank you very much.